Super right. Hi everyone, I think we're just going to get started now. So first of all, thank you everybody for coming. And before we start, I just wanted to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather are the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And then secondly, to welcome you here to the Vancouver Aquarium to see Damien and to learn more about the Volvo Ocean Race sustainability program. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about OceanWise and what we do and why we're super excited about partnering with this program. So our mission here at OceanWise is to inspire the global community to become OceanWise by increasing its understanding, wonder and appreciation of our oceans, and therefore allowing people to become empowered to make meaningful changes within their communities to help protect our ocean health. With that in mind, you may have walked past the table outside. There's a few leaflets and things out there that you can have a look at when you're leaving. But one of the things I thought would be particularly appropriate for some of the sailors in the audience is the BC Sightings Network. So this is one of Canada's longest and most successful citizen science programs. So what this program does is since 1999, they have collected opportunist sightings of whales, dolphins and porpoises and sea turtles from individuals, coastal citizens, that allows researchers to more accurately map their distribution and find out how the health of these species and how they're using their habitats and so on. There's many ways in which you can report sightings. So if you're on your boat and you see a cetacean, that you can phone in, there's email, you could just mail us the entry of your logbook, for example, on the website, and also there's a whale reporting app, which you can find at wildwhales.org. And there's also some leaflets outside that you can pick up and to learn a little bit more about this. Also, I want to tell you a little bit of a plug for another event that we're running on the 23rd of January. It's the beginning of a new lecture series, a monthly lecture series that's going to take place here at the Aquarium. This series is called Ocean Matters, Uncharted Perspectives on Our Oceans and Climate Change. And our first speaker I'm very excited about is Kai Chen. He is Professor in the Institute for Resources, Environment and Sustainability at the University of British Columbia. And he does some fantastic work looking at all different aspects around ecology and preserving the oceans. And so what he's going to talk about is seeking justice amidst complexity, sea otters, poachers, kelp, and coastal communities. So if you're interested in that, you can register on the website. One other thing is that as OceanWise is a self-supporting non-profit organization, we are dependent on revenue generated from the facility as well as the generosity of donors. So if you have a little bit of spare cash, there's a donation box just outside the theatre, and any few pennies you can donate would be a great help to us. So I bet you're super excited to hear from Damien. So I'm just going to introduce Damien, just in case you don't know, but I'm sure most of you do. Damien is from Kerry in Ireland. And his career covers virtually every major transoceanic competition, including 5 Volvo Ocean Races, including winning the race in 2012 with Groupama. And in addition, he has a link here to the Aquarium. One of our VP for Education actually worked with Damien in the Canadian Wildlife Federation. And so Damien worked as a recreation education manager. And he's here because he's an advocate for outdoor education, connecting people with the oceans and ocean sustainability. So I'd like to pass you over to Damien.
Can everyone hear me? Does that sound okay? Thanks very much, Ruth, for the great and generous welcome. Thank you, John, and the rest of the team from Vancouver Aquarium to allow us to have the opportunity to, first of all, be here with you this evening. And I have a suspicion there's a few sailors in the audience. In fact, I think the sister of one of the Volvo sailors who I sailed with quite a few editions ago, so that's pretty exciting. So I'm going to be driven a little bit by the audience as to what you want to talk about and what we look at. I have a few videos. I also have a PowerPoint. And we're going to talk about the Volvo Ocean Race, of course, and a larger sort of context of actually what are some of the objectives around the Volvo Ocean Race this time, because embedded within the program, the way the event is run, is a very strong sustainability program, which is linked to some of the partners' objectives. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And really the main core objective here is to launch the Volvo Ocean Race education program, which is really exciting. Basically, it's a program which links ocean literacy to our sport, and so gives us the opportunity as sailors and as athletes to promote something which goes beyond our sport, and it's an amazing opportunity. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that as well. On the way in, as Ruth mentioned, there's some collateral on the table out there from OceanWise, and also there's a few booklets which are printouts of the Volvo education program, which is available online. However, those booklets out there are for the education manager here, so please just use them as reference documents and leave the 9 of them there when you leave. Thank you. So I'm going to start with, well, I think the introduction has been made. I'm with Vestas 11th Hour Racing, and we're participating in the Volvo Ocean Race. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's the longest sporting event in any sport. It's 9 months from start to finish, 48,000 miles. You know, to put that in context, having done I think this is my 6th event, although I'm not on board at the moment. I will be soon. And it's my 10th round the world event. That represents like sailing to the moon and back plus some. So I think that's more than 500,000 miles for myself, and I'm not the only one out there with that type of mileage. So really, this is our career, and this is what we get to do. Vestas, of course, is renewable wind, renewable energy. And they're one of our main partners. They were in the race last time, sponsoring a boat.
This is the Volvo Ocean Race, the story of a 45-year obsession, sailing's race around the world, the ultimate test of a team, and the place where elite sport meets human adventure. In 12 editions dating back to 1973, 2,700 sailors have competed. 5 have paid the ultimate price in search of glory. Their stories are a reminder of the physical and mental challenges the competitors face. The race began with moments of calm amid the chaos, an adventure for dreamers, as well as the world's best sailing talent. But it quickly came to define professional sport's relentless search for marginal gains. Sailors would snap toothbrushes in half just to save a little weight. One skipper made all crew members have their appendix removed before sailing. With up to 10 sailors packed into 65 feet of carbon fiber for weeks on end, in a race that lasts almost 9 months, it's an adventure that borders on a psychological experiment. The Volvo Ocean 65 yachts they race in are strictly one design, identical in every important respect. So the only differences in performance come from the skill, application, and teamwork of the crew. For every second they're at sea, their job is to squeeze as much speed out of the boats as possible. There is no conserving energy, no downtime, no autopilot. It's race, eat, sleep, repeat. On a typical leg, sailors push themselves so hard they can lose up to 10 kilos despite consuming 6,000 calories a day. New rules for this edition mean more time facing fearsome winds and monster waves of the wild Southern Ocean. There will be more strategic risk-taking, stealth mode, and the return of female sailors to the heart of the race. Uniquely in professional sport, on board each boat is an embedded multimedia reporter telling the real story in real time. 7 teams compete in 2017-18 with no prize money at stake, just the chance to see their names engraved on the trophy and join an elite few who can say they did it.
Not normal people.
Felt we had the most to prove.
That was life.
Iceberg on the path.
You win it once, you win it twice. Come second the next time, so you got to go
Gets in
again.
your blood and you can't get rid of it.
The people that do the Volvo are absolutely not normal people.
This is not a normal sport competition. This is a race where they put their lives on the line.
I don't know what's happening, but I'm pretty sure we're getting off this boat quickly.
To win one of the most prestigious trophies in sport.
I was never been motivated by any more than the winning of the race. It was totally dominated by the feeling of either winning or losing. You win it once, you want to win it twice. You come second the next time, so you got to go again.
How many great sailors had challenged for this and failed?
I've done every edition since 2000 and I've never won it. Second's good. It's a taste of what it takes. Fantastic.
I participated in 7 races. I've been 7 times around the Horn. Why do you do it? You're sailing in a storm or really bad weather, and you just look around to your guys, but then you realize there's lots of other competitors out there who are facing the same. You just want to be tougher than the other guys. It's just the best sailing you can do.
It's epic sailing. It really, really is, and you can't find it anywhere else.
I am never, ever, ever doing this race again.
You know, boat race is a boat race. But that was life.
You'll be probably frightened at times, scared, worried. You'll hate it. You'll absolutely despise the fact that you're involved. And when you get to the finish, you'll know why, because there's nothing like it. It gets in your blood and you can't get rid of it. Frightened at times, scared,
Not normal people.
worried,
Felt you had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
Once you want to
get some blood in the cup.
No one had ever sailed the Southern Ocean, really, not raced the Southern Ocean.
You don't know what's going to be down there. We know we're going into ice.
It's blowing 35 knots. You're doing 25 knots of boat speed. The navigator sticks his head up the hatch and he'll say, iceberg on the bow. The heart starts going and sweat's coming down the back of your neck. Your feet are ice blocks. Your hands are like ice blocks. Your face is raw red from the salt spray. The boat is rocking down.
One of the last true human adventures.
It's both frightening and exhilarating.
You're so scared that you almost freeze up. At the same time, you have a smile on your face.
The Southern Ocean is the ultimate playground. No matter how much the race evolves around its people and its boats, nature will always still rule that race.
Not normal people.
Felt you had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
Once you want to
Get some blood in the cup.
The Volvo Ocean Race is the toughest race on the planet, and we're put here to tell the stories of the men and women on board.
You're on 65 feet of space every day, day in and day out, and your goal is to try to bring a new and creative perspective to the viewer every day while telling the story of the sailors.
You're in the ocean, you're in sea salt everywhere, you're never dry. There's no more tough environment than this.
Not normal people.
Felt you had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
Once you want to
Get some blood in the cup. frightened at times, scared,
Not normal people.
worried.
Felt we have the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
Get some blood in the cup.
How can I describe life on board? Well, it's kind of like living in a house that moves. Compact living arrangements, some shared living spaces. The kitchen is cozy, but the views are magnificent. The neighbors are friendly too. There are downsides. A small problem with damp. The bedroom is basic, and it can be a little noisy. The bathroom can be challenging. The killer feature is the swimming pool. It's really spacious. Okay, so it's not an ordinary home. It isn't an ordinary office. Does your home do this? Does your office do this? But life still goes on, and work goes on, all in the pursuit of this. Racing around the clock for weeks at a time. That's weeks eating this, sleeping like this, dreaming of this, looking like this, and surviving this. It's not an ordinary life, and maybe the people living it aren't ordinary people. But this is life lived to the full. It's life lived at the extreme.
To sail around the world, it's really a privilege to be able to see and experience some of the things that we're exposed to. You know, there's not that many people that are able to have the experiences that we do, and to see the amount of wildlife, and also, to be honest, the amount of pollution that exists out here in our oceans is really humbling. And I think, you know, with that knowledge and understanding comes a deep sense of responsibility to do something about it. In order to bring about change in any fashion, some component of education is necessary. You know, with our team here in the Volvo Ocean Race in particular, we're excited to use this as an educational platform to bring further awareness and understanding to these issues, and we'll be continuing to do that throughout the next race here.
All the time I've spent in the world's oceans, I've seen a lot of changes over that period of time and that many laps around the world. There is an issue, and we can actually all do something about it. If we can raise that awareness and get everybody to just change the way they think and the way they act a little bit, we're going to have a huge impact.
Frightened at times, scared,
Not normal people.
worried.
Felt we have the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
Get some blood in the cup. Sorry, guys.
Not normal.
Felt we had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the path.
Get some blood in the cup.
Let's go.
Dongfeng race team were a surprise hit in the last race, despite including a handful of Chinese rookies with virtually no sailing experience.
Bit of a smile.
This time, skipper Giles Cordrelia has 3 Chinese sailors back as part of an ace crew, boasting more experience, and they're pumped up. For Dongfeng, team building is a serious business. Cordrelia desperately wants to become the 3rd French winner, and after coming so close last time, he's leaving nothing to chance. Like Dongfeng, Mafre tick all the boxes. Their squad is packed with Olympic medals and America's Cup wins. Skipper Xavi Fernandez has 2 of those medals himself, and his clear goal is to give Spain a first ever win in the race. Next up, Vestas 11th Hour Racing. They're on a crusade and on a roll. American duo Charlie Enright and Mark Towell are back to head the team after grabbing a victory on the final leg of the last edition. Vestas return after their incredible comeback story last time when they hit a reef and wrecked their boat. And thanks to the backing of 11th Hour Racing, this campaign is a platform to promote ocean health. Turn the Tide on Plastic also carry an environmental message. They feature the race's only female skipper in Dee Kafari, an ocean racing legend who became the first person to sail solo, non-stop around the world in both directions. Yes, it's a thing. She has a fully mixed male-female team, mostly made up of young sailors.
I'm ready for everything, mate.
Okay.
One intriguing battle pits 2 Dutch boats against each other. Team Axo Nobel have an outstanding international squad. One of their strengths is youth and experience. Back to lead Brunel in the Volvo Ocean Race is Bauer Becking, a genuine sailing legend. No one has sailed more miles in this race than Becking, but in 7 previous attempts over 3 decades, he's never won. Could it be 8th time lucky?
2, 1, go.
Next, the newcomers Sun Hung Kai Scallywag. Sailing for Hong Kong, they are skippered by Aussie David Witt, who is nothing if not a straight shooter. They're highly motivated, with winning experience and incredible team spirit. So there you go, 7 teams, all desperate to get their names etched on that trophy in the toughest test of a team in world sport.
Not normal.
Felt we had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the path.
Get some blood in the cup.
I've been waiting for this moment all my life to have the opportunity and a realistic chance in winning the Volvo Ocean Race.
Qu'on soit femme ou homme, ça change rien. En fait, on est d'abord des navigants, on a la même passion et le même rêve, le même but. Pas pour faire de la figuration, mais pour gagner cette Volvo Ocean Race.
Not normal.
Felt we had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the path.
Get some blood in the cup.
that water's coming across the deck faster and faster every race. So for me, the race is actually getting more and more dangerous.
There's one element that will never change, and that's nature.
You don't know what's going to be down there. We know we're going into ice.
You know, when you push off the dock, there's always that shot that you don't come home.
I can't believe this. I can't actually believe this is happening. Okay, so it's, I don't know what time it is exactly. We just hit reef.
We are standing by for you.
The biggest fear is of the unknown. You know, you can be completely in control and then completely out of control of a situation very quickly.
You're very conscious that you're a long way from land and that one mistake could mean a lot of damage to the boat or much worse to one of your crew members.
No matter how much the race evolves around its people and its boats, nature will always still rule that race.
Not normal people.
Felt we had the most to prove.
Iceberg on the bow.
It gets in your blood and you can't.
There we go. That says it all. I think that's enough for tonight. I'm off. It's not always the format of video that I use, but from this edition, I think it just gives a quick snapshot of what the race is about. And the one thing about showing a 25-minute video is that everyone's gone to sleep and we've broken the link. So let's get back into it a little bit. So my name is Damien Foxall. I'm with Vestas 11th Hour Racing, and right now we're... Oh, I think it's not working. There we go. Right now we're second on the, is this the fourth or fifth leg of the race? I've lost count. And this is actually the tracker that I took a clip of just this evening before I came in. So the boats are on their way between Melbourne to Hong Kong. I think they're less than 2,000 miles to go now. And at the top of the rankings, Mapfre are leading, and then we're joint second with Dongfeng. So on this leg, Scallywag, the Australian Hong Kong boat, is leading, and we're in a close second. So it looks like we're in the trade winds, and there's going to be no significant changes over the next few days, or at least if there is, it's all we're going to be going through boat speed. So it really has become a drag race, having crossed the doldrums and having sailed through Micronesia. So that's the race, and we can certainly zoom in. I've got the internet here, and we can have a look at that in a little bit more detail. One thing I didn't say when I first stepped up was, like, I really want this to be sort of an interactive, organic. Some of those elements. And the first thing that we defined was that sustainability for us was not going to be a compromise. This is just a shot of the boats leaving. This is the first leg from Alicante in the Mediterranean in Spain as we head out to Lisbon, just a short 2-day leg, and we're sailing through the Straits of Gibraltar. Obviously, there has to be something that's going to give here, and we were just fast enough to get across the front of that ship. But really, in terms of sustainability not being in compromise, the objective was to be fast and to be run, from a performance side, try to win the race, certainly do our very best. And there's a lot of boats out there trying to achieve the same thing. And for us, sustainability is, rather than being some sort of compromise, it's become an advantage. It's become one of our strengths. So I hope to represent that to you in a small way. Sustainability for us was really using the Volvo Ocean Race as a sporting platform, as a global platform, was an amazing opportunity to showcase and to bring across a much more important message, a scientific message, which is going to reach literally millions of people around the world, because the Volvo Ocean Race, it really is a global event. From our perspective and from the event's perspective, we got 3 main pillars. One was to maximize the impact of the event and of our team through education, public outreach. One of the specific objectives that we set for our team was to have a positive plastic footprint. So, when we think of plastic footprint, we think of how we consume, how we might refuse or might recycle. A lot of it, of course, ends up in the landfill. But we looked at it, how can we not only reduce the landfill, but possibly offset it? And so we've come up with quite a few good initiatives which allow us to offset the small landfill amount that we have. And right now we're at about 80% plastic recycling and upcycling. About 20% of our plastic goes into landfill, stuff that still can't be recycled or reused in many of the countries is stopping. But then we have initiatives which allow us to offset in some way that 20%. And it can be very simple, something like just a beach clean or through education and other similar initiatives. So that's a pretty cool thing. One thing we started out very early on was training ourselves. And from some of us, sort of running an event and running our lives through environmental best practices was fairly familiar, but for most of the team it was brand new. So as collectively we went to the Cambridge University for Sustainability, for Sustainable Learning, and this is Mark, and we met, they're also part of the British Antarctic Survey organization. And there we got to meet these scientists that were, it was all around ice cores, and ice cores that they drilled out at the Antarctic ice sheet. And this piece of ice, I think, was about 1,000 years old. And as we held it up, the air bubbles were popping out of that slice of ice. And it was like, well, that's time travel. That bit of air sealed in that bit of ice 1,000 years ago is coming back to the present. And it really sort of, it was one of those moments where we collectively all went, oh, wow. And it was funny, when we walked into the laboratory, there was a little old fella in a white coat, and he sort of didn't seem very animated, but the minute he opened up the fridge, he sort of lost about 30 years, and then he started talking about Shackleton and Scott and the 27 times that he'd been down to Antarctica. And the fact that the last time he was down there, they were really finally getting through the old ice into the real stuff, the stuff that was going to bring new knowledge about climate change and about the world's atmosphere. And I think they were down, I don't know how many miles they were down into the ice sheet. And on that winter, they broke the bit in the hole. After 10 years of drilling every summer, through the ice sheet, and there's a specific window where they can work, and then they have to leave Antarctica. And he broke the bit. So like, well, what did you do? You get like easy out, you backed it out. He said, yeah, we spent the rest of the summer trying to get that bit out of that hole, and we couldn't. The following year, they went back and started a hole right alongside year one. And so this was a bit of ice that had low value for them, and it was more of an education thing. So that was us educating ourselves, and we had an amazing day in Cambridge University. I can say I went to Cambridge, same place that Darren went to apparently. The other pillar of the Volvo Ocean Race event sustainability program is minimizing our footprint. So I've talked a little bit about that. Plastic footprint, especially from this context, especially when you're running events, it's primarily, of course, driven by beverages. And so at every Volvo Ocean Race village, they're providing drinkable water sources and encouraging people to bring their reusable bottles. One thing that we looked at as a team was actually going to our suppliers and saying, well, are you using sustainable standards? And if not, can we help you to do that? So one of the obvious ones were our suppliers, Musto, and anyone who sails will know that's really high quality foul weather gear. And anyone who's ever bought some Musto gear knows it comes really well packaged in plastic. Heavy gauge plastic is a high quality product. They try to sort of showcase their product in a lovely way. And we went to them and said, well, I don't think we can partner with you if you're not going to make a bit of effort. And a few emails, a few calls, they probably spoke to their warehouse in China or wherever it was. And one fold of the garment and reducing the gauge of the plastic, they reduced their plastic packaging by 70%. Really easy. I think it actually had a reasonable economic value for them as well to do that. So that was just through one very small question from our side. I talked a little bit about, this is very early on in the event, and we partnered. So we compete on the water, and this is one of our competitors, Turn the Tide on Plastic, sponsored by the UN and partnering with the UN program, Clean Seas. But here we are joining hands around sustainability and participating in the annual Worldwide Beach Clean. And the other final piece is really leaving a positive legacy. So there's various elements to this. There's the education program, which I really would like to talk about. From our team side, we also have a grant program. So at every stopover, we partner with a local organization around some general theme of ocean health. And so in Spain, we partnered with a local organization that worked on conservation of marine mammals and studied ocean plastic in the Mediterranean. In Cape Town, we worked with an organization that worked on equality around resource access, in this case water, which is a big issue in Cape Town at the moment. So that's an ongoing program. It's really exciting. It allows us to leverage again not only our team's participation in this global event, but to sort of uplift some other partners as we go around the world. And that's part of the Schmidt Foundation initiative, which is linked to our team. And then on the scientific side, we've got some really exciting things happening. So linked to the Volvo Ocean Race, we have a partnership with NOAA. And so this is the guys here on the right-hand side there on your screen, and they're dropping a drifter buoy off the side of the boat. So we get to go to places that no one gets to go to. We're like way out, quite often way off the merchant shipping tracks. And so we get to provide this service, basically, where we're dropping off to drifter buoys, which provide oceanographic and meteorological data. And in a very funny way, that actually serves us, because that very same buoy is taking real-time data, whether it's sea temperature, wind speed and wind direction, wave period, and that data goes to reinitialize the very same weather information that we're using on board. So that's kind of a nice loop. I've got a short video which is linked to that, so it's probably worth having a quick look if you want.
Hi, I'm Liz Wardley, and I'm a science nerd.
Well, this is the drifter buoy that we've been assigned to deploy, and today is the day. We've been carrying it on board for NOAA, and it's going to go in the water, and the instruments are going to collect all sorts of data that's going to go back to them on the oceanographic trends, and that will give them more information to make more accurate weather forecasts, so it will benefit us in the long run, but also have a general trend of how the weather's shaping up and the changes that are occurring. So we have a number of these throughout the race, and this is the first one that's going to go in the ocean and start working from today. That's giving birth to an alien species.
Huh? 2, 1. We're supposed to disconnect like that.
Yeah. You good on the time? All right, we're nicely on Brunel's line here.
Roll to load.
Yeah, I don't think I turned it on.
So yeah, are we back on? We are. I think one of the attributes that we have on our boat is quite a lot of humor, so that goes a long way in the Volvo Ocean Race. Trust me, after 9 months at sea, you need that. Yes, we have a question. No, so we're very careful. It's a one design boat and every gram counts. So we're very careful that when we're doing some of these additional extracurricular activities that it's done in an even way. So on one given leg, each boat will have the same amount of extra work to do, same amount of weight. So in this case, every boat would have carried one of those drifters on board. Yeah. And this just gives you an idea of basically the existing oceanographic water analysis to date, and you can clearly see, of course, North Atlantic and most of the sort of high traveled routes, which are pretty well covered, but a lot of the areas that we go to aren't. And so they're measuring pretty standard stuff, I guess: water salinity, temperature, pH, would that be chlorophyll content? I know was one, is that right? And I think CO2 content as well. But most excitingly, for the very first time, they're also measuring plastic, microplastic content. So there's a filter in there which basically picks up the stream of water that goes through the system on board, and every 2 days they change that filter, and those filters goes off to a laboratory in Germany to be analyzed. So they're already we're receiving feedback showing microplastics everywhere that we go, even in the Southern Ocean, and I think that's fairly well recognized now, and pretty scary, of course. One of the other ocean science programs, and I'd like to sort of again echo the program that Ruth mentioned earlier on, which is around marine mammals, and we have a fairly similar program where, first of all, we're looking at providing guidance for the skippers around best practices, how to, manage marine mammals if we see them, what to do if an unfortunate collision happens, and that does happen every now and again, and then being proactive with regard to citizen science. So we've put into place a protocol so that whenever one of the OBR, whenever anyone on board sees a marine mammal, the OBR will log it, and we're collating that data and sending it back to the International Whaling Commission. So that'll go into the sort of international set of data set of marine mammal sightings. So that's pretty exciting. In a similar way, that we're also reaching out to local organizations in the various stopovers to send us back data sets which will allow us to highlight sort of hotspots. And one obvious one, of course, is when you're coming into Boston, is where the northern right whales are, and there's a specific exclusion zone there that we have to be very careful of as we head into Newport. The education program is probably our strongest outreach tool, and so far it's reached out to 20,000 students around the world and been taken up in 28 different countries. So I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about that. It's basically set up so that within the village, the Ocean Race village, there's workshops which receive these school groups at every stopover and every day of the race. And then there's an online race program which is basically a comprehensive curriculum fit program which allows teachers to link ocean literacy to regular school curriculum. So whether it's math, science, technology, language, global studies, this program is designed to allow teachers, whether it's formal or informal teachers, to teach kids about ocean literacy, linking in with their own programs. So that's really exciting. It's translated into 6 different languages so far, with another one coming. So French is coming, so English, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Dutch, and Swedish. So that's really exciting. So we're already looking at a really, really strong outreach. And this is just an example of one of the workshops. We use Wisdom, who is the race mascot, is a laser. I think Wisdom still exists, and someone's going to tell me I've got it totally wrong. I think he's the oldest known seabird that we know of to date. He's something like, is he in his 30s or 40s? She, because she's given birth to quite a few chicks, again another one recently. And this is Lucy, who does the education, the Volvo Ocean Race Sustainability Education Manager, and giving a workshop to kids in Cape Town, I believe. And they use Wisdom, and it's a full operation that goes on. And of course the kids discover that Wisdom isn't just eating things that Wisdom should be eating. So you can't help be affected by that, of course. And then the education program, again, it's printed out. It is also online. So for anyone who's an educator or who has kids in school or friends with kids in school, it is a really, really amazing program. There's 4 different themes. And it really is designed to empower kids to make lifestyle changes for themselves, which of course then goes and affects the household and the school. And we've got kids who are writing letters to their school teachers and asking them to speak to their to the kitchen, to their suppliers. Can we have food that's not wrapped in plastic? Can we ban straws from the school? And that's happening as a result of this education program. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So just that's basically the sustainability partners of the race. Most importantly, I'd really like to again acknowledge the amazing potential to collaborate with OceanWise and the Vancouver Aquarium. This is a super opportunity to launch the Volvo Education program here in Canada, so thank you very much. Thank you, John and Ruth and the rest of the team. For us, this is all about inspiring others, inspiring ourselves and our colleagues to make a change. And you know, I'm quite a long way along the way this year to having a positive plastic footprint and bringing my team along with me. And of course, that's what education is about. One thing I would like to ask you to do here before you leave, if you would like to get on board and take a pledge for this with the UN's Clean Seas program. This is a program that both OceanWise, Vancouver Aquarium and ourselves are aligned with, and I think it's whether you're an individual, a family or a company, there's a pledge that you can take. If you'd like, you can do that through the Volvo Ocean Race website, which allows us to drive some metrics through our program. But most importantly, we would really like you to take the pledge. And for those of you who are interested in the education program, you can access it through volvooceanrace.com education. And yeah, if you want more specific information, education at Volvo Ocean Race, and Lucy will certainly get in touch with you. I've slipped very quickly from the race into the education program, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions. We can even open up the tracker and find if something's happened in the last hour. I'm sure there's probably a few questions that I haven't answered. So yeah, sir. I think the trend over the last 6 editions of the Volvo Ocean Race has been to reduce crews. And you know, I think traditionally we are going from a format where it's a crewed sailing boat. Everyone had their job and they were specialized. And you know, if you were a bowman, you never drove, and if you were a helmsman, you never did you know, if you were a navigator, you never helped. And we're moving more and more into a discipline which I'm sort of more familiar with in France, for instance, where we do a lot of short-handed racing, whether it's single or double-handed or slightly larger crews, and people are much more multidisciplinary. And so they're looking at, the last I heard for the new boat was crews of 6. But even now, you know, sailing with 8, 7, one of the boats started with 7, most of them have 9. The crews really are sort of cross, you know, multidisciplinary, if you like, and most of the crews can drive. Most of the crews do drive now. Of course, we try to, in a specific maneuver, we'll try to have the bowman in the bowman's place and the helmsman driving. But really, most people are interchangeable, and we can really see that as well. There's already been a lot of crew changes on this race, especially we've had a few within our team, and that's important to be able to build in that redundancy from the outset. Yeah, hi. Good question. Do I know what I'm talking about or not? So, so I may have, from my perspective, I grew up in the southwest coast of Ireland in an amazing, beautiful area, fairly similar in some ways to maybe northwestern BC or Newfoundland, if you like. I'm from southwest Kerry. In fact, I was looking at it a couple of nights ago because I took the kids to see Star Wars, and most of it's set on the Skellig Rocks. And if anyone knows what that is, it's an amazing outcrop of these, you know, sheer cliff-surrounded islands of the southwest coast of Ireland. One of them's a major organic colony. And literally that was one of the islands that I took people out to when I was a kid on boat runs. So you know, I grew up in a sort of in a natural environment with an appreciation of it and an objective to become a marine biologist. I failed at that, and I went sailing instead. But over the last 10 years, I've had an amazing opportunity to, as a sports person, to be able to link what I'm doing to nature connection. And I think there's a very obvious sort of recognition now among the education sphere of the importance of nature connection and the sort of the growing lack of it, if you like. So I worked for 6 years for the Canadian Wildlife Federation as a recreation education manager. We worked with school groups and informal groups like the YMCA and gave amazing opportunities, and they still do, to kids around Canada to get outdoors. Mark Towhill, one of the skippers of our team, because we have two, has a strong environmental science background. Otherwise, most of the sailors, really, that's what we are, sailors. But more and more so, I think we're recognizing that we have an important role to play in sort of showcasing, if you like, the natural world. And I think from our perspective, certainly from my perspective, that's really important. Where I grew up is still pristine, it's still amazing natural beauty like we have here in BC. And so that's a baseline which, you know, if you probably went back a couple of hundred years, it probably hasn't changed an awful lot. However, and where we go to, it still hasn't changed very much. But more and more so, we're seeing places which have been degraded, and that's become, that baseline has changed, and that normal has changed to a sort of an unacceptable normal. So, you know, personally, my objective is to continue to provide opportunities for people who don't have the fortune that we have to see the natural sort of world in its normal state. And so when they go on the beach is dirty, and that's normal. They just kind of walk through the plastic, sit down, and maybe go for a bit of a swim. So it's important to be able to reset these baselines for people who don't have that opportunity, and that's personally my objective. Yes, hi. I can see you. You're putting your hand up. Is there? Yep. Do we have a night? That's a really good question. I think it's a really good idea. I'm going to take that back to. So, do we have a night crew and a day crew? I'm going to take that back to the boat for the next leg. I'm going to be on the day crew, that's for sure. I like that. It's a great suggestion. So actually, we in some ways we do, and in some ways we don't. I'll explain that. So we have a watch system. So basically, we rotate through every 4 hours. We will have a crew change. So 4 hours on and 4 hours off. And typically, maybe more traditionally, there would have been, like, let's say, a blue watch and a red watch. And there would have been 4 people who would have been on watch for 4 hours, and then there would have been a full change, and another 4 would have come up. The only problem with that is it creates a kind of a we call it the heaters and the soakers, because these guys are going this way and these guys are kind of going the same way but this way, and you know, so it creates an inconsistency at the helm and on the way we manage the boat. It also means that shortly after the watch change, people are up there with no idea whether the next cloud is going to be a big one or not. So right now, most of the boats use a system where they're still doing 4 on, 4 off, but it's we call it kind of a rolling watch. So every 2 hours or every hour, 1 or 2 people will come up, and so so it's staggered, if you like. So yes, we have a watch system, but we get to see both the day and the night, and we sleep in the middle of the day if we have to. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we talked about the right whale exclusion zone off Boston and whether they exist elsewhere and how are they implemented. John, would you like to stand up? I need someone from the Ocean Wise to come up here and answer this technically correctly. There are several exclusion zones, and so basically the exclusion zone off Boston and Nantucket is a very important habitat for the northern right whale, of which I think there were less than 300, and there were last year there were I think that same population, there was an unprecedented loss of northern right whale life in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and I'm not sure if they know exactly what the cause was, but more than 4, 5, or 6 animals were lost. And in a small population, they consider now that potentially the sort of viability of that population is becoming really, really affected in the short, medium term. So that zone off Nantucket and Boston is really important for feeding and breeding, I believe, and merchant shipping, any shipping has to respect that zone, and so we have to do the same. There are other places in the world, I'm not totally familiar with them, but John assures me there are. This is one that really always coincides with typically our race route if we're going in or out of Boston or Newport. So Yeah, and they're implemented by government, by the coastal state. Okay. Yes. So yeah, what are the psychological challenges and how do you choose your crew, taking that into account? Well, I think obviously experience counts for a lot. So that has been, to a certain extent, what's created the sort of crew choices to date. And, typically, Bauer talked about it with Brunel, sort of when it's tough and you look around and you see your guys and you feel like you're pretty well backed and off you go. And, literally we are looking after not only the boat, but everyone's, our sort of buddies' lives, if you like. So having that confidence is really important, and you only get that through experience with your crew. And that's why, this is a 9-month-long race. It's the longest event in any sport. But typically we take a year or sometimes 2 years to lead up to the start of this race. And part of that is really bringing the crew together around one single leader with one specific goal. With the new rules, we have access to younger sailors now. We have to take 2 under 30s on board. And of course, a lot of them aren't tried. On our boat, Jenna, who's an Olympic sailor, gold medalist in Rio, she'd never slept on the boat before. On a boat before, not just our boat. And so when she did the transatlantic with us, that was a new experience. But very quickly you see whether people are compatible under stress, whether they're still joking and smiling even though they're cold and tired, and whether they're a safe set of hands. And I think you can possibly do, some of, especially, don't want to stereotype, but typically Scandinavian teams are quite strong on team building and sort of trying to set up artificial training sessions beforehand. But at the end of the day, what happens on the water is really what counts, and just time on the water basically sort of weeds out the people who are best not there and confirms the people who should be there. Yeah. No, that's right, there was a man overboard. So how do we decide when we wear tethers or not? And so this is something that's mandated by the crew themselves and the skipper themselves. Yeah, so it's tethers are not the be-all and end-all. And in fact, if you were sailing on a multi-hull, being harnessed on all the time when you're on deck could be a dangerous scenario, because if the boat flips over, you're tethered underneath the boat. On a monohull, as you move around the boat, depending on the conditions, sometimes you need to move quickly, sometimes you don't. If you're doing work in a more risky area, then you do need to be clipped on so that you can do your work safely. So it really is up to the individual's sort of own assessment, but also sort of overseen by the watch captain or the skipper. And we have a protocol in our boat is if one person puts on the harness, everyone does. So that would be the first rule, typically at night, and especially if we're reefed or sailing over 20 knots. But at the end of the day, yeah, you'll probably see us a lot of the time walking around with no harnesses on, and there was a very unfortunate man overboard on Scallywag a couple of days ago. They were in tropical water and the guy floated and the boat sailed around and picked him up and off they went again. And he wasn't injured or harmed in any way, and they're still leading the race. But that really is the exception. So we carry with us typically an AIS transponder, which allows us to very, very precisely over a short distance of a couple of miles pinpoint that person. All the John Boys or life rings would also have an AIS tied onto them. And obviously then smoke flares and MOB flashers. And so we're pretty careful with the equipment we take on board us and we carry with us. And more so, the suppliers of that type of equipment has made it so small and so light that there's really no excuse to wear it, not to wear it anymore. Yeah, sir. Who sells the best foulies? We better turn it. Can we stop filming? Musto have been an amazing partner for us, for our team, and they've reduced their plastic wrapping footprint by 70%. And breathability. I mean, to be honest, I think some of the suppliers and manufacturers are starting to create some of their own materials, but many of them are just still have the Gore-Tex license. And so, we play around a lot with the weight of the material. Typically, if we're going to the Southern Ocean, we would take a heavier weight material, whether, again, it's Gore-Tex and breathable. But the idea is that, in fact, if it's too light, the wind profiling creates this cold feeling, and quite often a wet feeling. And you get up and go, geez, my ass is soaking wet. But in actual fact, it's just that cold, damp feeling that you get and you actually realize you're perfectly dry. And to be honest, of the events, I think this is my 10th round the world event. I'm sort of like five last. I don't think I've been wet in the last sort of 15, 20 years, unless I've done something really stupid like break a neck seal or forgot to zip up the foul weather gear. So the gear is so amazing now. It really is. It's nothing like the PVC, the yellow PVC that we used to wear. And you look at the guys in the Whitbreads, yeah, that was hard. That was a different era. Yes, sir. Well, okay, highs and lows for me for the last couple of races. It's just a roller coaster. I think I'm just sort of give a very general reply. It's a roller coaster. It's a constant sort of drip feed of adrenaline and stress, if you like, for 9 months. I really don't think there's anything like it. It's an amazing competition. It really is. And it doesn't go away when you get ashore. You only have typically between 1 week to 10 days, and sometimes it's only 2 or 3 days ashore. And the stress is still there. You're getting ready for the inshore race. You've got other obligations. You're debriefing the previous leg, getting ready for the next one. So it's 9 months or more of adrenaline and stress. However, that is peaked by highs and lows, as you suggest. And in the last race, I stepped up for just one leg with Dongfeng, and we were the only boat that sailed from Auckland to Ushuaia because everyone else continued round to Itajaí. And what happened is we broke our mast. We were doing pretty well, and then we broke our mast just before we got to Cape Horn. I think actually we see it in the video. I was on that boat. And it was a really difficult situation because that bit of mast came down and it was still tied up by shrouds and rigging and spectral rigging and carbon rigging that wasn't going to just let go. And so we're still sailing along with reduced sail, can't get the main down, can't really do anything, and we're just sort of now pointing at South America, Patagonia basically, and we've got about a day's run, so things calm down a bit and we keep sailing, we go through the night, and the next day the rig has taken away all the leeward spreaders, so now we can't tack or jibe because the whole thing will come down. And we had a difficult decision to make, was whether to send someone up to try to cut it away, or actually just let go of the rigging and let that go over the side of the boat with its own challenges and dangers of potentially risking puncturing the hull. Eventually, Kevin, who we see on the movie there, he actually did go up and managed to cut the rig away, and we recovered most of it, or at least what we could, and motored on into Ushuaia. And it went from being a sort of a sporting success to a sporting disaster. And then, of course, the race is over. We're in a good first, second place. 2 years of effort, and then that night, as we motored through the Beagle Channel and the Straits of Magellan, up into Ushuaia, which is the most southern town in South America, the closest thing you can get to Antarctica. And I think, from my perspective, it must be like Iqaluit, but just on the other end of the continent. And, so they basically supply offshore fishing boats and expeditions going to Antarctica. And so we get to this, I'm heading to this place that I've read about forever, and this is suddenly sort of my boyhood dreams are, okay, well, the race is over. This is an adventure. We're off, And we were sleeping away, everyone's recovering, and the navigator looks, Pascal, and he looks at me and goes, hey, c'est quoi ça? You know, and we're looking at the chart, and there's this icon on the chart that I'd never seen before, and he'd never seen it before, and I'm sure some of you will know what it is. But at the mouth of every tributary valley which came into the Straits of Magellan, there was this zigzag icon. And we looked at it, we couldn't think, what is that? And then suddenly we looked at it, it's ice. It's an iceberg, you know? And so we came out, and sure enough, the moon had just come up over the mountains, and we're looking at this, you know, literally sort of ice cliff, which was filling up this glacier, basically. And so that went from kind of one of the most amazing, you know, terrible moments in some ways, to this amazing experience where we finally ended up in Ushuaia, creating a jury rig in Ushuaia and getting the boat back in the race. So yeah, sort of all wrapped up in one. And like, yeah, I've got many others, but I'm sure you want to get home. I'm not sure how we're doing on time. Ruth, we'll take a questions or. Yeah, so we don't have anything. We basically look ahead, and some sort of sonar or radar which would allow us to see in the water if we can see ovni, as you would say in French, unidentified floating object. And this is a question that we've been asking ourselves from a marine mammal perspective as well. And I know there are programs that are around the world. The IWC are looking organization in Austria. I know that the ferries that run out to the Canary Islands out some equipment, whether it's Doppler based or whatever, I'm not sure. You know, how do marine mammal perspective, not all marine mammals, not all of them sound down below. It depends if they're feeding, eating, not. There's no one solution in acoustically understanding whether a whale is in your way. So that's kind of a non-solution, I believe, even with regard to some sort of, but then you're in kind of a potential solutions. So there's been much experimentation, but right now, so you really is getting your fingers and touch. So we run into things fairly often. IW maintains, or at least has gone back and recovered in the 1960s, I believe, and I think 3 or 6 on that database. I think it might be closer to 3, but it might be 600. Ship strikes, fairly, you know, very investigation, but from don't say anything, and of course that's the wrong thing to do. We really need to look at it more on the side of the road. There's obligation to call whatever base or your local organization. In regards to, you know, how often do we? Unfortunately, we do fleets because the boat in the water, and the whales kind of 4 or 5 knots. So, you know, typically there's within this a couple every year. Yeah, sure, and some, you know, out of North America to France a couple of years. Boats had something like, and it wasn't clear whether they were marine. Hit them on a fairly regular basis. you know. Someone here. They're also in some ways we need to mitigate that by to avoid them as an event from an. No, we hit a lot of other stuff as well, but more typically plastic. And you see the guys diving off the front of the boat. What we'll try to do is slow down the boat to like 1 knot, jump up, and that's possible. If it's not windy, then if it is windy, then you have to really slow the boat down. If you're doing 30 knots, to 4 or 5, go ahead. Boat to get it off. In the last race, they were you could see through it was a sea snake, so rather unfortunate. You're picking up something on the rudder and or on the plastic that size has a significant impact on our boat speed, and we can't about it. Yep. It really is dependent on the bit of ocean you're in. I was a little wary when people ask me, you know, do you see a lot more before? And I'm like, well, I'm certainly one of the sailors who probably has the most miles, and I'm be careful when I reply to that question. I think if I was honest, of course, I'm seeing more plastic, but I'm probably more aware of it as well. And to be honest, most of the plastic of nether zone below the we see what's picked up on the keel. If you were kind of, it might be interesting to do so your keel is this thin and I'm running along, what are the chances that I'm going to stick? So if I do that like once a day, well, plastic was in that area. I mean, it must be fairly easy to calculate. And again, you know, the chances the keel is going to pick up the plastic and the plastic is going to stay there. I mean, just so, yeah. And we just sailed a really sad raft of human detritus, which had drifted down from the tables and kids talk. It was just like, you know, it was pretty shocking. And I know recently, of course, in the Caribbean where we're it's not like a gyre that suddenly turned up in the Caribbean. That's a specific event which has created those rafts. But then more consistent, we don't really see that as much as someone who goes there specifically. And when you're back from Hawaii after the Transpac race, you go through that. You either motor through it or you're sailing around the outside, and that's how it was originally found. Around Bermuda jar, there's a bit more turning up, and we can see that when you're sailing through a lot of rivers coming in from countries with no resource recovery units, and so we're seeing a lot of plastic in places like that for sure. Atlantic Ocean, probably not that often, but we know it's there, right? So, yeah. Complicated navigation systems on board. and another computer for the OBR, the onboard reporter. And as you saw, that provides the satellite system provided by the Volvo Ocean Race. So and then those systems communicate and receive information from the boat for wind speed, temperature, water temperature, air temperature, direction. All of that needs to be run by a battery, and the battery needs to be charged. This edition, the charging system for the battery also propeller, if you like, which we drop down into the water, and it does enough. The amount of power that we need at the moment to drive a lot of power in batteries. But typically the engine we have either drives the boat going with their vehicles to become, or at least certainly looking at that diesel free for the go, sir. Which are provided, we all use the same navigation software, so they're packages which are provided by Volvo, and then the way you use them is really up to the navigation expedition. And so I can probably back up here a little bit and probably find it, but the navigation software allows speed that which basically combine all that into a theoretical performance for the boat, and if by the weather routing, which is basically the theoretical optimum route for we can do that. Basically, the whole art of the navigator is to or better, and which software he'll use, which is the any specific part of the intelligent than me, much closer to Einstein than I'll ever even pretend to be. And they really are geniuses from a mathematical, which goes with navigation as well. Of course, anyone now can tell you where you are. Navigation isn't about knowing where we are as quickly as possible. And the whole game of chess of offshore sailing is around between tactics the information coming standpoint. If on the other hand you find that technically and nothing lines up, then your strategy is the game of chess that we play. Yeah, with regards to sort of what Yeah. Yeah. Typically, a sailboat will hoist the sail and either jammer or leave it on the winch, and the sail stays up, held by the rope. And we want to drop it. Ropes. People laugh at me. And down we, for various with the sail and the forestay, you need 10 tons of load on the backstay to hold that up. Tons of compression on the mast, not and we put 5 tons in the by locking those click click, it locks into place, and then we remove the last bit of halyards. So that instead of having 2 + 2, 4 tons of down, and these systems have been versions of abilities and also some, and you know, mostly now they hadn't had any issues. You really don't want an issue. Looking too smart, even if you're not closed unit around it, and more if you haven't got your turns right. It's so pretty unbreakable. The only way to really of the shore crew and the sailors while they're at sea. The main advantages of having we're using the very same boat for the very first time in a long time in the Volvo Ocean there. They both, if you put another 4, which means that pretty much now all someone so asking about life jackets and a fair question, and it's also linked to the question around harness combined unit. Was a question that we used to ask ourselves, and you know, now the units made by Spinlock that, you know, you just don't even ask the question if it's time to wear your life jacket and harness, which are they wouldn't be underneath. If you come the Michelin man, we don't wear them all the time, which for often quite surprising. I know it's a case of finding the right balance between to feel comfortable really when the conditions don't really warrant having life jacket. Ruth, how are we doing? One more lady in the back. Two, because the two girls here wanted one as well. So, so collisions are, you know, when you they're heavily penalized. Quite often there's a collision that one it's very it's more, if there is contact, it's probably more of a tactical contact, which is looking for a penalty to justify as to who, and that is more often not created in this amazing, and I think, and there was a catch, or yawl catch, and they picked a spectator yacht. They cut it away. So, yeah, fairly rarely, yeah. There's a question, the lady up there in the back. Yeah. Yeah, the team, and it's also a question for the you know, from various perspectives. And also, the bigger the group, the bigger the group you get, the challenges you have. So having group Ocean Race now is so challenging, and the stopovers are so short, and the obligations within the demanding that start at the start, finish, and do every leg and every other obligation in between. So, you know, even not taking into account, you know, the real there could be an injury, and we had that where Charlie, our skipper, is actually at home because his little son had pneumonia, but he's heading back to Hong Kong now, and everything is good. So into that so we give rotation, which allows us to bring fresh people in when we need. So we have 3 girls for the 2 sailing spots. We have, I think we've got 4 or 5 under 30s for the 2 under 30 slots. We've got 2 skippers and probably 3 or 4 skipper. And it's sort of gone are the days where, yeah, you just start the race at the start. No, do it the hard way. New enthusiast, anyone who's sort of goes a question for this little girl. How many people, you know, coincide? How do I say that? All the boats now have converged. That's the right word. All the boats now have converged on the number of 9, which is basically crews. 2 under 30s, and the only exception on plastic, and they have a mix. 50 and so that's the advantage in some way. In a short-handed way, you know, to is really great success. You know, we see that scallywag, just a scallywag who've done a really nice navigation move coming out of the corner. Race, they've changed their now on board right now. She's a good woman navigator who was with last time, and so hopefully going forward, a question mark as to who and why people are. You just want, off you go. So thanks very much, guys.
Out, you can pick up some leaflets